They told us this file never existed. The patrol never deployed. The men never walked into that forest. But the fragments recovered over the years whisper another story. A story of silence, of men swallowed whole, and of a forest that does not let go. What you are about to hear was buried deep inside Cold War archives, hidden behind false reports and redacted pages. The folder carried one phrase across the top in thick, fading red ink: classified, Operation Black Timber. The case was meant to be forgotten, dissolved into the fog of the era. But it never truly disappeared. Like the trees themselves, it lingers, waiting for someone to step back inside. The year was the late 1980s. NATO. Forces along the German-Czech border were stretched thin, patrolling forests that had been fought over, bombed, and abandoned for generations. Some places were nothing but wilderness scarred by old wars. Others were marked with concrete skeletons of bunkers, rusted watchtowers, and whispers of what the Soviets might have left behind. The soldiers stationed at Forward Operating Base Greystone were hardened, well-trained, and bored. Routine patrols, routine maps, routine silence. Until one patrol, one mission never came back. The orders were simple. 12 men would conduct a reconnaissance sweep of a sector codenamed Black Timber, a stretch of dense, overgrown forest that few dared to enter. The reason was never explained. On paper, it was just another patrol zone. But those who lived near its edge spoke of things moving between the trees at night, of hunters who vanished without a trace, of the forest itself shifting like it had a mind. Soldiers dismissed it as local superstition, the kind of ghost stories villagers tell to keep strangers away. But when the orders arrived, no one argued. Soldiers don't ask why. They march. What makes this operation different, what makes it terrifying, is not just that 12 men disappeared. It's that there were no signs of a fight. No gunfire reported. No distress call. No flares in the night sky. They were simply gone, as if erased, but fragments were left behind. A bloodied radio handset, the casing cracked, recovered weeks later in a farmer's field more than 5 miles outside the forest line. A journal, half burned, its edges singed as though someone tried to destroy it in a hurry. Coordinates scratched into the inside of a helmet numbers that led search teams in endless circles. These were the only pieces the military ever admitted to finding. Everything else was erased. Families were told the men had been reassigned, or killed in accidents, or never deployed at all. Official records contradict each other. Even the dates are wrong. But deep inside the shadows of the archives, Operation Black Timber remained. A file no one was supposed to open, and no one was supposed to read. Yet here it is. To understand what happened, we have to rewind. We have to return to the morning they left the wire, boots clean, weapons loaded, unaware that they were marching into something not of this world. The patrol assembled before dawn, their breath fogging in the cold. They shouldered rucksacks heavy with supplies, checked their rifles, and received their last radio codes. There was no briefing about danger, no mention of the strange reports tied to the forest. Just an order: sweep Black Timber, report findings. Return by nightfall. At 0600 hours, they crossed the boundary line. 12 shadows vanishing into the tree line, one after another. The mist closed behind them, and the forest swallowed their footprints. By 1800 hours, they were gone, never seen, never heard, never returned. This is the story of Operation Black Timber, the patrol that vanished, the patrol that morning looked like any other. 12 men, lined up in the gravel yard of Forward Operating Base Greystone, their boots crunching against frost as the sun fought to rise through a blanket of low clouds. Sergeant Holly walked the line, his voice clipped, steady, the kind of tone that carried weight. He was the type of man you didn't cross a career soldier, carved out of discipline and long campaigns. His men respected him because he never asked anything he wouldn't do himself. That morning, though, even he kept glancing at the tree line beyond the wire, As though measuring what lay ahead, Corporal Davis, the radio operator, carried the heavy PRC-77 set strapped across his back. He had a reputation for detail, every log precise, every transmission clean. If anyone would leave behind a record of what happened, it would be Davis. Then there was Private Morales, the youngest of the group, fresh out of training, still adjusting to the weight of his rucksack and the silence of these border forests. Morales joked too often, laughed too loud, the kind of kid who filled the air just to keep from thinking too much. On most patrols, the others rolled their eyes. On this one, they clung to his nervous chatter longer than they wanted to admit. The rest of the men were seasoned, nameless to outsiders, but real to each other, men bound by nights of boredom, sudden bursts of danger, and the constant routine of being told where to go and when to vanish. To them, Black Timber was just another set of coordinates. A point on a map they would march into, clear, and leave behind. Gear was checked twice. Magazines loaded. Rations packed tight. Compass bearings locked. The men knew the drill. Hawley barked orders, Davis confirmed frequencies, Morales adjusted his straps for the 5th time. And then, without ceremony, the gates opened, and 12 shadows stepped off into the fog. The first mile was ordinary. Mud, frost, the sound of gear shifting with each step. Radios carried only static. Morales cracked a joke about how the mist made it feel like walking through an old horror film, but nobody laughed. The deeper they went, the heavier the silence grew. By the 2nd mile, the birdsong had thinned to nothing. By the 3rd, even the wind seemed to have died. Black Timber was unlike the other forests along the border. The trees grew too close together, trunks knotted, their branches overhead like prison bars blotting out the sky. The men walked single file, rifles raised, boots sinking into black soil that smelled of wet iron. Morales muttered that it stank like blood. Hawley told him to keep his mouth shut. Halfway through the 4th mile, Corporal Davis reported interference. His radio hissed, crackled, then spat out bursts of sound like voices speaking backwards. Hawley told him to adjust frequency. Davis swore the dials weren't the problem. The interference was inside the signal itself. Hawley dismissed it. The forest had always been known to play tricks with signals. Mountains, iron in the soil, old Soviet equipment buried deep. Nothing unusual, at least not yet. Still, the men began to notice more. Compasses spun for seconds at a time before settling. The mist thickened into walls that clung to their uniforms, damp and heavy. Morales swore he saw something move between the trees too fast, too tall, but when he raised his rifle, there was nothing. Another soldier laughed it off. "Deer," he muttered, though no one had seen deer tracks that morning. By noon, the silence pressed so hard it felt alive. The men spoke less. Their boots hit the earth like muffled drums, every sound swallowed by the trees. Even their breathing seemed too loud. The forest forced itself into their skulls, made every man listen for what wasn't there. It was a scout at the front who broke the silence. He froze, lifted a fist, and pointed to the ground. The others gathered, rifles raised, eyes scanning the mist. There, in the mud, were boot prints. 12 sets, fresh. Too fresh. They matched the size, weight, and spacing of their own. The men exchanged glances. Sergeant Howell crouched, running a gloved hand across the prints. His jaw tightened. The tracks led forward, then curved. Around trees. Across the soil. The pattern twisted into a loop. Then back around. Until finally, impossibly, the prints circled right back to where the men were standing. Davis muttered, "That's not possible." Morales shook his head, wide-eyed, whispering, "We've been here already." Hawley stood, his voice low and cold. "Stay sharp. Eyes up. Weapons ready." He didn't say what they all knew. That they had been walking for hours. That they had covered miles. That these prints were theirs. And yet somehow, the forest had led them in circles. They hadn't even realized they were already trapped. The discovery of their own footprints rattled the squad more than they admitted. Soldiers weren't supposed to get lost. Not with compasses, maps, radios. Not with discipline drilled into their bones. And yet there they stood, staring at their own tracks, circling back on themselves like some cruel joke. Sergeant Hawley ordered silence, though silence was already their enemy. The men fell into formation, weapons up, eyes scanning the mist that clung to the trees like gauze. The deeper they moved, the stranger the forest became. Sounds arrived in fragments, broken and incomplete like echoes with no source. A crack of a branch that came from everywhere at once. A distant whistle, gone before they could decide if they'd heard it at all. Then came the clicking. Faint at first, like beetles knocking against wood. But rhythmic. Too deliberate. Tick, tick, tick. Pause. Tick, tick. The men froze, straining to hear. Morales whispered, "That's not an animal." No one disagreed. The forest seemed to breathe with them. When the men inhaled, the fog rolled forward. When they exhaled, the mist drew back. More than one soldier muttered prayers under their breath. Sergeant Hawley pressed them onward, his voice harsh, cutting through their fear. "It's tricks. Terrain plays games. Eyes forward." He spoke like a man trying to convince himself as much as his men. By mid-afternoon, shadows moved against the wind. Morales swore he saw one tall, angular, sliding between trees where no breeze touched the branches. He froze, rifle aimed, finger quivering on the trigger. But when the others swung their weapons around, there was nothing. Just fog, just trees. Hawley hissed in his ear, "Pull yourself together, Private. You fire that rifle at shadows, and you'll bring hell down on all of us." Morales lowered his weapon, but his eyes kept darting into the tree line, desperate for something to confirm what he knew he'd seen. Then they found the bunkers. Concrete hulks buried in moss and roots, relics from a war older than any of them. World War II fortifications, abandoned and forgotten, yet still standing like tombstones. The first bunker's steel door hung open, rust bleeding down its surface, hinges groaning in the wind. The squad swept the entrance. Hawley ordered Davis forward with his flashlight. Its beam cut through the dark, revealing helmets collapsed in piles, rifles rusted to the floor, and bones scattered like dice. Some human, some animal. The air smelled of mold and old iron, heavy with something else sulfur, faint but undeniable. On the walls, under layers of peeling paint, symbols had been carved deep into the concrete. Not words, not numbers. Jagged shapes that twisted when you stared at them too long, as though your brain couldn't decide what they meant. One soldier muttered that they looked fresh, not decades old. Davis scribbled notes in his journal, his handwriting jagged with haste. Later, his words would be found half-burned, but one line would remain legible. This place wasn't empty. Something waited here. The men argued whether to stay inside for the night or keep moving. The bunker offered cover, but none of them wanted to sleep among bones. Sergeant Hawley, true to his nature, chose discipline over fear. "We move. We camp outside the tree line. These walls hold ghosts. We don't need to join them," no one argued. As the sun dipped, the forest darkened fast, the canopy swallowing the last light. They set camp in a small clearing, the ground damp and uneven. Fires were forbidden slight, attracted attention, so they sat in darkness, helmets resting against their packs, rifles across their laps. Davis tapped faintly at his radio, trying to punch through the static. Occasionally, fragments of sound leaked through, distorted voices like underwater speech. None of it made sense. None of it sounded human. The forest did not rest. All night, the clicking came and went, closer, then further, circling them like wolves. Men whispered, swore, prayed. Merrills muttered that something was watching them. His eyes were wide, darting from shadow to shadow. Halle barked at him to sleep, though none of them truly could. And then it came. A scream, not close. Not far, somewhere in the endless trees. High-pitched, raw, like a man dying slow. Every soldier snapped awake, rifles raised, hearts pounding. Halle counted quickly 1, 2, 3. 11, all present. None missing. Yet the scream had been human, unmistakably human. The sound rose again, warping, stretching into a wail that faded into the fog until nothing remained. The men stared at one another, eyes reflecting the fireless dark. No one dared speak. Because if all 12 of them were there, then who? Or what had been screaming in the woods? The forest answered with silence. Morning came late in black timber. The fog did not lift with the sun. It thickened, settled, smothered the camp like a wet shroud. The men stirred in silence, eyes sunken from a night without rest. They moved stiffly, checking rifles, shaking moisture from gear, trying not to speak of the scream they'd all heard. It was Morales who noticed first. One of the sleeping bags was empty, neatly unzipped, boots still at its side, rifle leaning against a tree. Its owner, Private Kincaid, was gone. No tracks, no signs of a struggle. Just gone. The squad erupted with shouts, men scattering through the mist, calling his name, searching the tree line. Sergeant Halle cut them off with a voice like thunder. "Hold formation! Back to camp, now!" The men obeyed, though panic clung to them like the fog. They returned to the empty sleeping bag, staring at it as though the fabric itself might explain what had happened. Halle crouched low, scanning the earth. Nothing. The soil was damp, soft enough to hold a footprint. But Kincaid had left no mark. He had simply vanished between one breath and the next. The radio crackled. Davis nearly dropped it as a voice bled through the static, distant, broken, but urgent. ... Turn back. Not authorized. Leave now. Then only white noise, hissing loud, a scream of static that made the men wince. Davis tried to adjust frequency, sweating as he twisted the dials. Nothing. The signal was gone. For the first time, Halle hesitated. His jaw clenched, eyes darting to the fog that pressed in from all sides. "Pack it up. We move." His voice was iron, but the men heard the doubt beneath. Merrill's muttered prayers under his breath as they marched. He clutched his rifle too tightly, finger twitching along the trigger guard. "I saw eyes last night," he whispered to no one in particular. "Yellow eyes. Right in the tree line. Watching us." Another soldier spat. "Fog tricks. You're green, Morales. Everything looks like monsters out here." But even as he said it, his eyes betrayed unease. As they moved deeper, signs appeared subtle at first, then undeniable. Trees claw-marked 10, 12 feet high, gouges too deep for any wolf or bear. The air carried a sharp tang, like sulfur or rotten eggs, burning in the back of their throats. A sweet metallic stink lingered beneath it, like rust or blood. Morales gagged and covered his nose. The others cursed under their breath. Hours bled away, the patrol circling again and again. Compasses spun. Landmarks repeated themselves. A fallen tree they swore they had passed miles ago appeared ahead, unchanged. The men began to argue, snapping at each other. Halle silenced them, ordering focus, but even he could not hide the confusion in his eyes. Then they found them. The clearing opened without warning. The mist pulled back just enough to reveal 6 mounds of dirt. Fresh, the soil was dark, moist, turned recently by human hands. Each mound was marked with a wooden cross crudely hammered together from branches. And on each cross, carved into the wood, were names. Their names. The men stood frozen, staring at their own graves. Private Ellison bent forward, tracing a finger across the rough carving of his name. The wood splintered under his touch, flakes of bark falling like ashes. He turned, eyes wide, voice trembling. This is a joke, right? Someone's screwing with us. No one laughed. Davis whispered, "How the hell would anyone know our names?" The fog pressed closer, swallowing the edges of the clearing. Morales dropped to his knees, sobbing quietly, his rifle clattering against the dirt. Hawley yanked him up by the straps of his gear, forcing his eyes forward. "It's PSYOPs," he growled. "Soviet mind games. That's all it is. They want us scared. They want us broken." His words were steel, but his hands shook. The silence returned. The clicking began again. Louder this time. All around them. Tick dash tick dash tick. Pause. Tick tick. From the trees, from the soil, from the very air. The men raised rifles, spinning in circles, eyes darting at shadows. The sound grew faster, sharper, filling their skulls. Then it stopped. The clearing held its breath. And from somewhere in the trees came a low, guttural laugh. Not human. Not animal. Something stretched between the two, mocking, vibrating through their chests. Merrill screamed and fired into the fog, muzzle flashes tearing the silence. The others held fire, but their hands were shaking, knuckles white against their weapons. When the echoes of gunfire faded, the fog rolled back in, heavier than before. The graves waited, silent, each mound untouched. The crosses still bore their names. Sergeant Hawley lowered his rifle, his voice ragged now, stripped of certainty. "We move, now stay tight." Eyes sharp, the men obeyed, though they carried with them something heavier than their packs, the knowledge that the forest already knew them, that it had prepared their graves, that it was only a matter of time before each one was filled. The forest pressed closer with every step. The mist clung to their faces, damp and cold, curling in their nostrils like smoke. The patrol moved tight now, rifles raised, boots crunching in rhythm that sounded too loud against the silence. No one spoke. No one dared. The graves were behind them, but the weight of them stayed. Each man felt the dirt on his skin. The crosses carved with his name etched into the back of his skull. It began with movement. Not one, not two shapes. Tall, wrong. Flickering between trees, faster than the eye could catch. Merrill spotted one first, jerking his rifle up. "Contact," he shouted, but the words cut short. Because when the shape stilled, there was nothing but fog. Then another soldier saw it. And another. Every man caught a glimpse of something tall sliding through the mist. No sound of footfalls. No rustle of branches. Just motion, smooth and silent. Shadows that should not have been there. The clicking returned. Louder now. Tick, tick, tick. Fast, erratic, circling them. The sound came from every direction at once, like teeth snapping just out of sight. Morales panicked first. His rifle barked, muzzle flash slicing through the fog, rounds punching holes into trees. The others shouted, "Cease fire! Cease fire!" But then someone else saw movement and opened fire too. Chaos erupted. Gunfire thundered in the forest, bursts of automatic fire lighting up nothing but smoke and shadow. The smell of cordite filled the air, stinging their eyes. When the magazines ran dry, silence swallowed everything again. The men stood heaving, chests rising and falling, rifles trembling in their hands. Nothing lay in the trees. No blood, no bodies. Only fog. Hawley ordered them to regroup. "Back to formation. Move." His voice cracked, harsher than ever. They pulled together, weapons up, scanning the tree line. The shapes were gone. The forest stood still, silent but watching. By nightfall, they stumbled across another bunker. This one half buried in a hillside, its steel door leaning on broken hinges. Hawley hesitated, eyes darting between the mist and the dark opening yawning before them. "Inside," he ordered finally. "We need cover." The bunker swallowed them whole. The air inside was heavy, damp, reeking of mold and something sour, like old meat. Their flashlights swept across concrete walls marked with more carvings, symbols like before, but sharper, deeper, fresh. As though carved yesterday. They set down packs, leaning rifles within reach. But the bunker did not give them peace. It whispered. At first, faint. Just a trick of echo, they thought. Until the whispers formed words. Their words. Conversations they had spoken hours ago, repeated back in distorted voices. One soldier froze, whispering, That's me. That's what I said. The others listened, hearts pounding. The bunker spoke in their own voices, overlapping, murmuring fragments of fear, orders, jokes. A chorus of themselves. Morales broke. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head, rocking back and forth. It knows us, he sobbed. It's inside already. It's in our heads. No one could calm him. Halle grabbed him by the collar, shouting in his face, Hold yourself together, soldier. But Morales only cried harder, screaming that the walls were listening. The whispers swelled. Another soldier snapped, screaming, Shut up! He raised his rifle to the concrete wall and unloaded, the thunder inside the bunker deafening. The muzzle flash lit his face twisted with terror. When the gun clicked empty, silence returned. And then he turned the weapon on himself. The shot rang out like a hammer blow. The squad froze, ears ringing. Blood sprayed across the floor, mixing with the damp and the dirt. The man collapsed, twitching once, then still. No one spoke for a long time. Their breaths came ragged, eyes darting at shadows that seemed to move across the bunker walls. Hale's face was pale, his jaw rigid. We leave at dawn, he said at last, his voice hollow. We push through. We break out of this forest. No one argued. That night no one slept. They sat in darkness, staring into corners where the whispers crawled, their nerves stretched thin as wire. The bunker gave them no safety. Only a roof to hold the voices closer. When the first light bled through the cracks of the doorway, Haile gave the order to move. They gathered their gear, stepping over the body of their fallen comrade. No one spoke his name. No one dared. Outside, the fog greeted them like an old friend, cold, heavy, waiting. They fell into formation, boots sinking into damp soil. The forest creaked around them, whispering, watching. The clicking returned softer now, but constant, like something pacing just behind their ears. It was Davis who noticed first. Boot prints in the mud. Dozens of them. The men raised rifles, eyes darting, searching for another patrol. But when Davis knelt, shining his light across the ground, his voice cracked. They're ours, he whispered. The prints matched them exactly. Their treads. Their spacing. But the soil was wrong. The prints weren't fresh. They were old. Days old. Boots that had passed this way before. Boots that belonged to them. The men stared down at their own path, marked not once but over and over, as though they had been walking in circles for days, retracing steps they didn't remember. Morales whispered, We've already been here. The fog shifted. The clicking grew louder. The forest closed in, and the men realized they were chasing themselves through black timber. By now the men were walking in near silence, as if sound itself had turned against them. Every word they spoke seemed to hang in the fog too long, echoed back a half-second late, twisted and wrong. Even Sergeant Haile, who had never once allowed fear to infect his orders, had gone quiet. He marched with his rifle tight against his chest, eyes darting into the mist, jaw locked as though clenching his teeth kept the forest from crawling inside him. Corporal Davis fiddled with his radio, adjusting dials, tightening wires, doing anything to keep his hands busy. The device hissed, spat, then suddenly came alive. A voice broke through, sharp and urgent, demanding coordinates. Every soldier froze. For the first time in hours, they were hearing command. But when Davis read back their grid, the voice cut him off, confusion lacing each syllable. Negative. Negative. Those coordinates. They don't exist. The line went to static. Davis repeated the numbers again, louder, his voice cracking. The reply came distorted, broken, before fading into white noise. You are not where you should be. Then silence. The forest seemed to press in tighter after that. The men exchanged glances, each one reflecting what the others were thinking, but none dared say aloud that they weren't just lost. They were somewhere else entirely. Halle growled for them to keep moving, pushing them forward with sheer force of will. His face glistened with sweat despite the cold. The Klicken had returned, faint at first, then building. It moved around them like something circling prey. Sometimes it was ahead, sometimes behind. Always too close. Then it began. Private Ellison was walking second from the rear. He said nothing. No shout, no warning. He was simply there 1 second and gone the next. His pack slipped to the ground where he had stood, strap still buckled, rifle leaning in the mud. The men froze, staring at the empty space, then at each other. Ellison? Halle barked. Nothing. Davis scrambled to the radio, calling his name. As if the forest had reception, it shouldn't. No reply. Panic spread fast. The formation tightened, soldiers bumping shoulders, weapons trembling as they spun in circles. The clicking grew louder, rapid now, almost frantic. Echoing in their skulls. Another man vanished. No scream, no sound of movement. Just gone. His boots still planted in the soil, his body stripped from them in the blink of an eye. Morales screamed, stumbling backward, pointing his rifle into the fog. They're taking us. He shrieked. They're pulling us out of the world. Gunfire ripped through the mist, the squad firing wild in every direction, muzzle flashes tearing open the dark. Bullets chewed bark, ricocheted off stone, hissed into nothing. The smell of gunpowder filled the air, mixing with the sulfur stink that clung to the trees. Halle shouted for ceasefire, his voice drowned by chaos. Hold your fire, hold it. Slowly, reluctantly, the shooting stopped. The forest answered with silence. Then the clicking returned, closer than ever. Davis dropped to his knees, scribbling in his journal with frantic strokes. His hand shook so hard the letters bled together. Later, investigators would find the page half burned, but one line remained, smeared in black ink. Something's rewriting our path. The patrol tried to run. Halle barked for a sprint, his voice cracking. The men obeyed, boots hammering against the ground as they pushed through the fog. But the forest did not move like it should. Trees shifted places. Paths bent back on themselves. No matter how fast they ran, the clicking stayed with them, just out of sight, just behind their ears. One by one, more men vanished mid-stride. A soldier at the rear tripped by the time the others looked back. Only his helmet lay on the soil, spinning in the dirt. Another disappeared mid-leap, his rifle clattering against roots as though ripped from his hands. The survivors broke ranks, running blind. Morales screamed until his voice cracked, shouting prayers, curses, anything to drown the sound of the clicking. Halle grabbed him, yanking him forward, dragging him through the fog. Keep moving. He bellowed. The radio sparked again, filling with distortion. A voice bled through raw, panicked, cut by static. Davis shouted into the handset, but the words that came back chilled them all. Black timber is not natural. Do not enter. Do not. The line cut into a scream of static. Gunfire erupted again, short, panicked bursts. Soldiers shouted names that dissolved into the fog. The clicking grew louder, metallic, insect-like, drilling into their skulls. It was not outside anymore. It was inside. Then one final transmission. Davis's voice, broken, terrified, clawing through the static. Black timber. Not natural. Do not enter. The words echoed once, twice, then silence. The forest swallowed the rest. By the time night fell, only the mist remained. In the months that followed, the official record claimed nothing unusual had happened. The 12 men of the Greystone Patrol were declared missing in action, presumed dead. Families received folded flags, carefully worded letters, and the empty comfort of a line that read, "They gave their lives in service." No details. No explanations. Just absence. But behind the curtain of military ceremony, search teams were dispatched. Special units combed the Black Timber sector for weeks, moving through the same suffocating fog, the same twisted corridors of trees. They found no bodies, no shell casings, no gear beyond a few scattered fragments. Yet what they did recover only deepened the mystery. One team returned with Corporal Davis's journal, its cover scorched black, half its pages reduced to ash. What remained was frantic, words scrawled sideways in the margins, sentences running off the page. The last line was underlined twice, jagged, desperate. "It knows us. It rewrites the ground beneath our feet." Another team brought back a helmet. The steel was gouged with deep claw marks, raked across the surface in parallel lines far too wide for any blade. Inside, scratched into the metal lining, were numbers, coordinates that led to nowhere. The grid did not exist on any map. When analysts tried to plot them, they ended in blank space, as if pointing to a location that had been erased. A compass was found, its needle spinning endlessly no matter how still it was held. Radios, cracked open for examination, emitted faint whispers long after their batteries were removed. Engineers swore it was interference, but when the recordings were played back, the voices were familiar. They belonged to the missing men. Still, the search yielded no trace of the patrol. Eventually, the operation was shuttered. Reports were buried under classification stamps. Files were sealed and locked away. And just like that, the 12 soldiers were erased from official memory. Yet stories lingered. Locals near the forest spoke of strange lights weaving through the treetops, of silhouettes moving against the mist at night. Hunters claimed to hear the clicking echo from the depths of the timber, following them until they fled. A handful never returned at all. Whispers spread through the barracks at Greystone, too. Men said the patrol had been taken as part of a Cold War experiment gone wrong, an attempt to weaponize something the Soviets had awakened, or perhaps something older the forest had always hidden. Others claimed it was not human at all, that the forest itself was a predator, alive, feeding on those foolish enough to march into its heart. None of the theories fit. None could explain the graves carved with their names, waiting in the soil before they died. None could explain how men could vanish without sound, without struggle, leaving only boots and rifles behind. The file was locked, sealed with layers of secrecy. But even a locked file casts a shadow. Operation Black Timber remains one of those shadows, a story told in whispers, a caution passed from soldier to soldier. Somewhere in that forest, 12 men are still missing. Perhaps they are dead, buried deep where no one will ever find them. Or perhaps they are still out there, marching in circles, forever lost in a place that is not bound by time or earth. What is certain is this: the forest keeps its secrets. It kept them then. It keeps them now. And if you ever find yourself near those woods, standing at the tree line with the fog curling at your boots, listen carefully. If you hear the clicking, slow and deliberate, moving closer through the trees, run.